Should you trust a partner who has cheated before? Well, rekindling a romance is easier than rebuilding trust. And if you're on the fence about whether to give someone a second chance, you might have some tough to answer questions about human behavior itself. Welcome back to Savvy Psychologist. I'm your host, Dr. Jade Wu. Every week, I'll help you meet life's challenges with evidence-based research, a sympathetic ear, and zero judgment. Today, we take an unflinching look at what relationship research has to say about finding love after infidelity. If you've ever had a messy breakup, you know that it's never just over and done. There are dramatic fights and sweet reconciliations, and then doubt and betrayal and heartbreak, all the best of 90s rom-coms. But what happens when the movie has a sequel? How do you decide if you can give a relationship another try? What if there's a history of trust issues? A Savvy Psychologist listener named Amy reached out recently to ask about a ghost from a relationship past. She wrote, I had a fiancé about 20 years ago who left me for another woman. We never really lost touch and now have rekindled. We have some great chemistry, but I've always heard, once a cheater, always a cheater. I'm afraid the past will keep haunting me and holding me back from giving my all and completely trusting him again. Amy, I want you to know first and foremost that anyone in your situation would be having a hard time with this dilemma. There are many feelings here, right? There's fear, hope, doubt, perhaps a touch of resentment. And many of us can relate to the uncertainty of balancing these feelings when love and betrayal are involved. As usual, the answer is complicated. And today, I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. We're going to be brutally evidence-based in considering this dilemma. First, let's boil down the question to 3 things we need to consider. Question 1, how true is the age-old adage, once a cheater, always a cheater? What predicts whether a person will cheat again? Question 2, how does past infidelity affect the quality of your relationship going forward? And question 3, what else should we consider when trying to decide to rekindle a past relationship? Now let's look at what psychological research and relationship research have to say about these topics. So first, infidelity is a mixed bag. In the movies, people fall into affairs by accident. A chance encounter, an irresistible glance, a touch of the fingertips, a whirlwind romance ensues, one that nobody saw coming. If it's the type of story with a happy ending, they either follow their heart and end up happily ever after with a new partner, or they feel terrible about their one-time mistake and it ends up strengthening their marriage. Now, in real life, infidelity is more predictable. About 2 to 4% of married people have had extramarital sex in the past 12 months. Well, maybe not our past 12 months, given the pandemic, but usually in the past 12 months. And who's more likely to have done it is not totally random either. There are actually some consistent predictors. For example, people with higher narcissism personality traits, insecure attachment styles, and more open attitudes toward casual sex are more likely to have cheated. People also have sexual personalities, referring to how easily they become sexually excited and how inhibited they are when making love, and these traits can be associated with higher likelihood of engaging in infidelity too. More importantly for our dilemma, people who have previously engaged in infidelity are also more likely to do it again. Of course, this is not to say that someone who has cheated will definitely do it again, nor that they are narcissistic or certainly have insecure attachment issues. We're talking about higher likelihoods when we take a bird's eye view of a large group of people and their patterns. And of course, we can't discount the obvious. People in unhappy relationships with incompatible partners are also more likely to cheat. When we look at the overall picture, some portion of why people cheat is predictable, some seems up to chance, and some we don't understand. But an important thing to note here is that infidelity is, at least partially, founded on personality traits and personal history, not just on a chance encounter or on a one-time mistake. Now, what about how past infidelity affects your relationship going forward? Well, again, having cheated before is not a guarantee of it happening again. People do change behaviors, their way of relating to the world, and of course, relationships change too, and circumstances also change. But another thing to consider is that even when infidelity doesn't happen again, the past can affect how we feel about the present. And this is not even something we might think about on purpose. We might, at a basic perceptual level, see our partners differently because of the past. For example, research has shown that people who have cheated or been cheated on tend to be more sensitive to possible cheating behaviors. They're more likely to see ambiguous actions like having a meal with someone as potential cheating, compared to people who have never been involved in infidelity. And perhaps this is why a study on marriage counseling has shown that when a couple has infidelity in their past, it's hard for marriage satisfaction to be totally back to normal. Even with an intervention that does improve the relationship, it never quite improves to the level that it would be if there was no infidelity in the past. So far, the evidence seems rather pessimistic. We already talked about how if someone has cheated in the past, they're more likely to do it in the future, and a lot of it is based on personality traits and personal history. But of course, we've only focused on the issue of infidelity. A relationship is about a lot more than not cheating, right? For Amy, of course, this is forefront in her mind as she deals with the dilemma of whether to rekindle this relationship with her previous partner from decades ago who had left her for someone else. But I bet this is not the only thing that matters to her in this relationship. In fact, I imagine that for any relationship, whether old or new, we care about our compatibility with the other person and how they treat our friends and family, whether they're a dog person or cat person, and so much more. So let's not forget the other things that matter. So if you're reconsidering a relationship, ask yourself, why do you want to be with this person? What do you like about them? What do you look forward to in your future with them? What things do you have in common, and how do you cope with the things you don't have in common? And, of course, how do they make you feel about yourself? If you can easily and sincerely answer these questions in a way that points to a loving and fulfilling relationship, well, that's a good sign. But if these feel shaky, well, that's good information too. If the fact that they left you before, cheated before, treated you unfairly, lied to you, or ended up doing these things to others of their partners, if any of this makes you feel uneasy, listen to your gut. And that leads me to our most important tip for today, which is to be deliberate. Don't be swept along. We know from relationship research that when someone decides to be in one, they're more likely to be happy than if they slid into one. And you know how sliding into a relationship works. You say, why not, to a date, and you have enough of a good time that you go on a second date, maybe a third. You meet their parents because they happen to be in town, and before you know it, they've moved in because rent is so expensive, right? You didn't have a good reason to break up at any point along the way. But importantly, you maybe didn't really make the decision to be in this relationship at any point either. You were just sliding into something that defines a major part of how you spend your time, your emotions, and yourself. So if you're in a situation like Amy's, where you're grappling with the question of whether you can trust someone again after they had betrayed you, it's more important than ever to decide instead of slide. And while you do it, don't be distracted by the idea, once a cheater, always a cheater. Because ultimately, we just don't know for sure, right? And more importantly, that's not the real question. No matter what they or other people say, the question is not whether you can forgive their past mistakes. The real question is, do you respect and love this person? Do they respect and love you? And do you want to give your time and your heart to this person? Amy, thank you again for your question. and I wish you all the best in life and love. And thanks to everyone else listening as well. Let's continue the conversation on social media. Tell me more about your relationship experiences, how you deal with these dilemmas. You can find me on Facebook and Twitter. I'm at JadeWooPhD and also at QDT Savvy Psych. We can also keep in touch through the Savvy Psychologist newsletter. Savvy Psychologist is audio engineered by Steve Rickyberg and edited by Beata Santora. As always, Savvy Psychologist is strictly for informational purposes and doesn't substitute for mental health care from a licensed professional. Thank you again for joining me, and I'll see you next week for a happier, healthier mind.